Okay, in this video, I'm going to get right to the point, and going to focus mainly on my 1988 notebooks and journals. I'd mentioned in a previous video in several previous videos on Jamal Page, not Hijack Jed Watkins on Facebook.com, how I'd been designing a deep space fleet. Now, here's the realities of those designs I did not finish, because my notebooks and journals were stolen in order to be used for research purposes because of the simplicity, the basicness. I had said, that in one of those videos about how the cancer treatment machine design, I designed it to be able to be built with hardware store parts and basic household items. The more advanced the components used in the assembly, the greater the effectiveness of the machine, theoretically. So, the example I had used with that was an axe. A stone axe versus a bronze axe versus an iron axe versus a steel axe. But what does it take to create all of those? Well, Tarzan could go out into the forest, grab himself a stone knife, kill an animal, take its intestines, use it as a string, and use that stone to shape a bow and have a bow and arrow. He couldn't do that with a cannon, even with just basic gunpowder. If you make the barrel out of wood and stone, it wouldn't be able to hold the stresses of repeated firing, let alone increases in things like accuracy and power. That would require more and more advanced manufacturing capability. The more complex the whatever, the greater the manufacturing capability needed, the greater the testing, the greater the debugging. It's going to take more to create a 4-stroke internal combustion engine than a gear and chain pedal-powered jalopy. So when it comes to those 1988 notebooks and journals, it would have included ideas working on things like thrust vector, alloy. I had spoken in a previous video about the bases of some designs I had started, for a matter transfer machine and a matter conversion machine, which both would have been used in order to help supply the fleet with water, which would be necessary for life, period. Survivability would have been one of the main parameters for any fleet. Without water, there's no life, there's no fleet. So when it comes to those who stole those notebooks and journals, if you look at the realities of, say, Russia, the Soviet Union, they definitely had ingenuity, manufacturing capability, research and development, resources. Prime example is the T-34 tank from World War II. A lot of people consider it the best tank of the war. The Sherman was not the best tank in the war. We just produced so many of them. That's why, by some accounts, the average lifespan of a Sherman crew was 6 weeks in a war that lasted 6 years, that we fought in for 4 of those years. 6 weeks surviving in 4 years of fighting. The T-34 could survive the cold and still run. The oil wouldn't freeze and all of that. The components inside it wouldn't freeze. It would fire faithfully. They didn't break down much. The T-34 was just awesome. When it comes to thrust vectoring technology, in the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, it was the early 90s, it may have been a bit later, the Russians deployed their first thrust vectoring fighter. The US, if I remember correctly, scrapped their first thrust vectoring fighter plane in order to go back to the drawing board and bring out the F-22. I'm not saying that any ideas I had in my notebooks and journals did or didn't have anything to do with any of this. I'm just saying. So when it comes down to the realities of it, when it comes to Bruce McCoy's family, that, Bruce McCoy that lived down the hall from me on the third floor at West End Flats, either his daughter or possibly his granddaughter, Chanel Bradley, or Cece, she always claimed how my notebooks and journals changed science in Africa, but she also claimed she couldn't go back to Africa without me. That would have been one of the main realities that someone who's from the street corners and street corner focus, who grew up with a machine, never would have taken truly into account. With the advanced ideas in those notebooks and journals, she wouldn't have been able to all of a sudden build a manufacturing plant and research and development facility in the middle of 5 Point, capable of working on those things. She'd need someone somewhere with that type of infrastructure already in place. She would have taken them to Africa. They would have automatically realized that. They would have realized she stole them. Her family stole them. And they would have told them, don't bring them back unless you bring the man who designed it. Because if they had truly designed it, they would have been, with all the power and connections they had, they would have been able to do something with them here. They couldn't because of the reality of the two engineers and the cop who already did all of that when they robbed me. So this video is mainly for the street corners to give them food for thought when it comes down to everything that's been swirling around me as far as people trying to strong-arm me out of my intellectual property rights for my 1988 notebooks and journals, but at the same time claiming I was a spy, essentially. Now you know why they wanted that technology. More advanced components. Things designed from unfinished technology that was stolen from an 11-year-old boy. And then to do their best to legitimize their possession of things they never should have had and never would have thought of. Unless possibly they may have done something like, for starters, finish high school. It is what it is. But people with half a brain would have already thought of these things. And that's no insult to those who didn't. But if the goblin horde is insulted, get over it. I'm going to get back to Star Wars. May the blessings of the Lord be upon you in Jesus' name. I love you, little baby.